On April 30th of 2021, Diego Sanchez was publicly released by the UFC, canceling what was supposed to be his retirement fight with Donald Cowboy Cerrone and bringing an unceremonious end to a UFC career that spanned 16 years, 32 fights, and an astounding 6.5 hours of octagon time. Sadly, Diego's departure from the UFC was only the latest in a series of controversies surrounding his relationship with trainer and self-professed self-awareness guru, Joshua Fabia. I previously discussed Joshua Fabia in my video, The Lucid Dream of Diego Sanchez, which covered Diego's rise through the ranks of the UFC, followed by his slow decline and eventual meeting with Fabia that would shock much of the MMA world. However, the events that have unfolded recently have been so bizarre and unsettling that I thought this story deserved a follow-up. But first, let us refresh our memories of the unusual circumstances that led to this crossroads in the career of Diego Sanchez. In 2019, Diego was going through a turbulent time in both his personal and professional life. He was in the process of divorcing his wife of 8 years, while also growing increasingly frustrated with the treatment he was receiving from his coaches at JacksonWink MMA. It was during this period of vulnerability that Joshua Fabia sashayed into Diego's life.
I'm like, who is this little guy walking up to me? Like, he's walking towards me. And he's not even walking up to me to, like, confront me, talk to me, anything. He's just walking past me. But I recognize, you know what? Like, my intuition, and I caught it. I was like, wait a minute. Like, I've never seen a man walk that smooth. I'm like, that's a smooth-ass walk. Like, it just seems like he's floating in the air. Like, so I just randomly looked at his ass, and I said, what do you do?
Over the following months, Diego would split from JacksonWink and begin to train with Joshua exclusively. At the time, Fabia would assume not only the role of Diego's coach and trainer, but also his physical therapist, manager, and much more. The problem was, with Fabia as his coach, Diego looked terrible. In his first fight training exclusively with Fabia, he got dominated on the ground by Michael Chiesa in a way that we had never seen from Diego before. Additionally, Fabia's bizarre advice to Diego during the fight drew mockery from the MMA community at large.
I need that Tyson. I need that. No more playing. You gotta go 100, give it all. That's it. That's it. That's what it is.
That's what you call non-advice.
Initially, the strange circumstances of Diego's corner in the fight were just viewed as another chapter in the story of a man who once thought stevia cured breast cancer and believed doing yoga during thunderstorms made him more powerful. But the Michel Pereira fight was where things really went sideways. Diego looked truly deranged during this fight. He spent most of the fight running away from Pereira and using forbidden force field techniques, until Pereira hit him with an illegal knee. The long story short here is that Diego took the DQ victory, which led to an honestly unfair backlash against him. That said, it also led to an intense scrutiny being applied to Fabia and the School of Self-Awareness. In my previous video about Diego Sanchez, I didn't talk much about Joshua Fabia, for two reasons. One, because the video was about Diego and I didn't want to devote too much undeserved time to a man I believe to be a run-of-the-mill snake oil salesman. Two, there simply isn't that much verifiable information out there about Fabia. From interviews he has done over the years, Fabia has claimed that he was brought up early in the culture of Filipino martial arts by his grandfather who was a soldier in the Philippine Army. Fabia has also stated that his father was a Vietnam vet. From my research, both of those claims seem to be true. Many of Fabia's other claims appear to be of a far more dubious nature. For example, Fabia's bio on the School of Self-Awareness website boasts that when Josh was only 9 years old, his grandfather suffered a heart attack and ruptured brain aneurysm, at which point Fabia acted as his physical therapist and worked with him to recover to a remarkable 80% full recovery. That same bio states that Fabia has an innate understanding of the human body and that he has extensive specialized experience in defense, protection, human rights, and physical therapy. Quite the Renaissance man, but it doesn't stop there. Promotional videos created by the School of Self-Awareness paint Fabia as a nearly Christ-like figure who is feared, respected, and loved by people around the world.
Baptized in violence and extremes, he was formed into something formless. Healing, guiding, training, and supporting others since the age of 8 years old. Raised by the world. He's a teacher of teachers. Loved more than feared. Trusted by the most trustworthy. Feared by many, respected by even more.
Now, ridiculous videos like this could potentially be written off merely as propaganda pieces made to convince gullible people to hand their money over to the wise beyond his years guru, but the shit that comes out of Fabia's mouth is even more absurd.
He's seen me walk around the Holy Land barefoot and not take a slip.
You guys are really hot on the white and the black. You're talking to somebody that's a master of the gray. You don't even see what I'm doing.
What you'll quickly notice about Fabia is that he is a man who loves the smell of his own farts. After watching a few of these clips, you may be wondering what qualifications a self-help guru has to coach a UFC fighter. Well, this is where things get a bit murky. Fabia has been very vague about his experience in athletics in general, and combat sports in particular.
In essence, the way most people think of sports and the world of participating, you have the American way of seeing it, man. You have the, okay, you went to grade school, middle school, you play the sports here, you go to this is a feeder system, right? You go from this to this to this to this, you're in college, and then maybe pro if you're lucky. Okay. I've been traveling around the world since I was born. I was on the first kindergarten rugby league in Christchurch, New Zealand. I've participated in martial arts my whole life through actual family tradition of understanding things. Like, quite a bit different than going to a place and giving them money.
Fabia loves bringing up his time as a member of the first kindergarten rugby team in Christchurch, New Zealand, probably because it's one of his only athletic accomplishments that can be verified in any way. It's mentioned on his personal Instagram account, and way back in the day, he listed it under the activities on his old JF Hardcore Fitness website, alongside 4 years of high school football, 20 years of wrestling, 7 years of track, 10 years of Western boxing, 10 years of Muay Thai, 10 years of mixed martial arts, and 10 years of rock climbing. JFHardcoreFitness.com was one of the websites where Fabia offered his services as a trainer of Commando Krav Maga and Sistema, both being martial arts with questionable backgrounds. Commando Krav Maga is not affiliated with True Krav Maga and was developed by Israeli judoka Moni Azik, who lied about being in the Israeli Special Forces to bolster the reputation of his fighting system. Like many people in the tactical martial arts scene, Fabia also likes to imply that he has some top-secret Steven Seagal-esque military background.
Later in his life, he found himself following the footsteps of his father. He applied everything he had used to survive to work as a military contractor in special operations around the world.
Though rather than directly lie about his military service, he prefers to make vague statements about NDAs and working in counter-terrorism. If Fabia was 2 inches taller and 200 pounds heavier, you might mistake him for our boy Hemingway.
Non-negotiable.
Fabia's military experience likely comes from his time spent in South America training military and law enforcement groups under Sistema instructor Francisco Frank Arias. There used to be more videos of Fabia's time teaching Sistema in South America available on the internet, but most have been taken down. I don't think this is coincidental. With little concrete evidence of his past, Fabia is free to shapeshift from one persona to another. It was this ability that allowed Fabia to rebrand himself under the banner of the School of Self-Awareness. Through the School of Self, Fabia was able to present himself as a guru, a healer, a martial arts master, and possibly the savior of the universe. Personally, I think the School of Self is just like any other generic New Age mumbo-jumbo. Even when Fabia has the time and ability to express himself the way he wants, he still speaks in a stream of consciousness slurry of Eastern-scented metaphysical gibberish that sounds like it was made up on the spot.
Language. Very interesting subject. But first, is language even capable of doing what we want to do? And if not, why are we using it?
What I do find somewhat interesting about the School of Self-Awareness are Fabia's training methods, both for self-defense and general health and wellness. Fabia's training methods and workout routines tend to look like a goofy mix of CrossFit, yoga, and some of that vague Eastern mysticism mentioned a minute ago. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he makes up half of these routines as he's going along. You gotta confuse the brain to confuse the body, right, babe? This also extends to Joshua's healing techniques, such as relaxing deep massages with a whip. There is also this, unique approach to chiropractic adjustments. Don't laugh. You'll need some body work from Josh after he takes you through one of his extreme self-defense courses. Actually, Fabia's self-defense training is about what you'd expect. Krav Maga-inspired bullshido mixed with Ido Portal-style touch butt.
So now it doesn't look like I have anything, but I'm kind of pulling on his throat. And now, because he can still resist this, he's still able to move, I'm going to shorten the movement by grabbing his balls. So now it's done. You understand? It's done. Because I have his balls in his throat. Okay, pretty simple. Balls and throat. That's going to be the key on the ground.
There is also a large amount of the typical too deadly to be used in the octagon techniques that Fabia demonstrates in slow motion, of course, so he doesn't unintentionally maim the mere mortals that he is teaching these din-mock death moves to.
And that energy is going to break legs. See? But at full speed, and that energy is going to break legs.
But what really gained the ire of the internet were Fabia's methods of training Diego and other fighters. Part of this stems from the lack of footage of Fabia himself doing any real martial arts training. There was a video of him doing something with a heavy bag that was widely mocked on the internet. Then there is this very brief footage of Fabia hitting pads that looks pretty unimpressive if I'm being honest. When you look at Fabia training Diego, it's even more perplexing.
Look, there's nerves right there. He'll move his own face. Okay, right here. All right? That's what the glass jaw is all about. If I crack you right there, I don't care who you are, the ding and sensation starts to take over.
Even though Diego is gullible, I think he should have been able to see through this ridiculous George Dillman bullshit about pressure points and secret moves that apparently only Josh Fabia has ever thought of. What makes it truly bizarre is when you watch the rare few videos of Josh and Diego grappling. Even to my novice eyes, it seems obvious that Diego is holding back. Whenever he is about to take Fabia down or potentially apply a submission, Diego immediately lets go. Then when Fabia tries to take Diego down, Diego practically flare-flops to the ground. When I watch any video of Fabia training people, I get the feeling that it's as much, if not more, about Fabia stroking his own ego as it is about actually teaching anyone. And I've only shown you a fraction of what's out there. There are a shitload of goofy and weird videos from Fabia baptizing Diego to hitting him with a stick while Diego is hanging upside down, and much more. There were some very concerning stories to arise from Fabia's time coaching Diego, such as the incident where Fabia chased several fighters, including Emil Meek, around a cage with a real sharpened blade.
Go, touch each other. Everything's a knife. Everything's a knife.
There were also the troubling circumstances that occurred in the locker room before Diego's fight with Michael Chiesa. When the referee was laying out the rules of the fight to Fabia and Sanchez, Joshua stated that he had been teaching Diego a maneuver that he learned while training paramilitary groups in South America, a move which could prove fatal if the fight wasn't called off in time. From what I can gather, this technique appeared to be almost identical to ravishing Rick Rude's finishing move, the Rude Awakening. This information would later be leaked in the wake of Diego's fight with Michel Pereira, only further adding to the widespread mockery that was growing around Fabia and Diego at the time. When people really started digging into Fabia's presence online and the training methods we've seen, he became the laughingstock of the MMA world overnight. Fabia wasn't going to take this lying down though. In the wake of the criticism, he went on an MMA media world tour where he only made himself look more like an insane cult leader who had brainwashed Diego into being his disciple. After this media frenzy ran its course, Fabia and Diego faded into the background of the MMA landscape, probably because of more pressing topics like the global pandemic that was causing worldwide chaos, the least of which being a series of cancelled fights and a whirlwind of uncertainty about the future of the sport. For Diego, the time away from the sport proved to be a welcome period of rest. During the hiatus, he added a surprising new member to his corner, fellow Ultimate Fighter Season 1 alumnus Stephan Bonner, who would help Diego prepare for his fight against Jake Matthews in September of 2020. There's no way to sugarcoat this. I think Diego's fight with Jake Matthews is the worst performance of his career. Diego looked like a shell of himself. Physically, this was the worst shape I've ever seen Diego in. Even when compared to his fight against Pereira 6 months prior, Diego was noticeably doughier and seemed to have lost a considerable amount of muscle. Other than a few leg kicks, Diego looked like hammered dog shit and convincingly lost the decision to Matthews, with all three judges awarding Matthews a 10-8 round in the third. At this point, a lot of people expected Diego to be cut, but Dana White has a notorious soft spot for the fighters who took part in the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. So a deal was worked out, and Diego would be given a retirement fight in the UFC. This fight turned out to be against former JacksonWink teammate and fellow UFC Ironman, Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who was himself racking up several losses. Aside from Diego bringing up allegations of racism, homophobia, and sexual harassment against Cowboy, The lead up to the fight was going as normally as you would expect a Diego Sanchez fight to go. However, there were some warning signs of what was about to come. On March 29th of 2021, Diego appeared on the Real Quick with Mike Swick podcast, in what was supposed to be an interview about his retirement fight with Cowboy Cerrone, but turned into a 2-hour cavalcade of insanity. The interview starts off fairly normally, with Diego and Mike reminiscing about their time together on The Ultimate Fighter Season 1.
It all goes back to the loyalty of the tough one house, man. Come on, dude.
We're like brothers.
Who am I gonna give the podcast to? Who am I gonna give the interview to? My old roommate. Come on, of course.
Dude. That's right.
Man, shit, we're old roommates.
That's true, brother. That's true.
It's worth noting how energetic and happy Diego seems at this point in the interview, because it will become important later. For the most part, the conversation stays on a pretty reasonable track. They talk about the fight with Cerrone, Diego's decision to retire, and his move to American Top Team for this final fight. As the conversation progresses, though, Diego increasingly makes a lot of strange remarks. The ones I find the most disturbing are comments about the fake internet and Instagram bots.
You know, you got these people, I don't know who they are or what they are. They might be some bots. They might be a new computer program, because when I've looked them up, they don't look to be real accounts.
Yeah.
And as you know, and I know, I'm sure they've offered to sell you followers on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, every day.
Yeah, right.
Not that there isn't a problem with bots and fake accounts on the internet, but it doesn't take Diego very long to spin this into a full-blown conspiracy theory about wizards, puppets, and magic.
Things got to change. The world is living in an illusion, and there's many Wizard of Oz's playing puppets, you know. Yeah. And either you're a puppet or you're a string or you're a wizard. Yeah. And I'm just trying to not be a puppet.
We get a bit of a break from the craziness when Diego talks about his role playing Johnny Tapia in an upcoming film produced by Mickey Rourke. The respite is brief, because they then begin talking about the School of Self-Awareness and its online courses. Diego starts describing the online courses and is interrupted by Josh Fabia, who up until this point had remained nearly silent.
Be ready, be strong, and
So tell them what School of Self-Awareness will teach you with this online course. Go ahead, tell them, since you're the guide in the course, Diego. Explain to them.
I want you to notice two things about this interaction. First, look at the way Fabia treats Diego. He doesn't just order Diego around, he hits him the way somebody might bring a dog to heel. Also, notice the way Diego's entire demeanor changes. He basically shuts down. All the happiness and exuberance that was present earlier is completely drained from him, and he assumes the role of a subservient follower. When Diego isn't able to do as directed, Fabia simply takes over the conversation.
I'll do it for Diego.
Go ahead, yeah, definitely.
This is where shit really goes off the rails. He literally rants, non-stop, for over an hour. And credit to Mike Swick, I've never seen a better example of giving somebody enough rope to hang themselves before. I know Fabia is difficult for some people to sit through, but if you have the mental fortitude, check out Mike Swick's podcast. There is more than I can possibly talk about in this video. Just to give you a basic idea of what we're getting into, Mike Swick asks Josh to talk about the School of Self-Awareness online courses, and Fabia launches into a word salad tirade that starts with breathing, brings up the golden ratio, and says that Asians have more flexibility and leg dexterity because of squat toilets. Within 6 minutes of being asked about his fucking online courses, this dude brings up Buddhist monks self-immolating to protest the Vietnam War.
So now we would go into even our culture's ridiculousness of trying to understand meditation, when you have all seen the imagery of a real monk pouring gas on himself, lighting it in protest of the Vietnam War. Yet you think that Lululemons and good music are going to get it done.
This was really only the beginning of the crazy, though. Of course, we got the usual psychobabble and ridiculous bragging from Fabia, alongside some truly insane rants about feminine magic and toxic masculinity causing human beings to create buildings in phallic shapes. But from here, Fabia kicks it up a few notches by going on a conspiracy theory-ridden rant about the UFC colluding with Arab governments, Disney, Facebook, and betting websites to con people out of their stimulus checks, or something like that. I think even Fabia starts to realize how incoherent his bullshit sounds at this point.
I just want you to wrap your head on all this while we're watching videos of people saying they're going to make $1 million bet, yet you didn't see the $1 million. That's called pushing the bet line, bro, and swaying the angle to flop the flip.
To cap this epic tirade off, Fabia reiterates the idea that there is an organized effort using bots and fake accounts to manipulate the mindset of UFC fighters. Then he claims that he did a cyber investigation and was told that the negative comments were funded by dark money, which he explains in the most Josh Fabia way possible.
So, as working in special operations, wouldn't you call that terrorism? So it looks like terrorism domestic on your own people. Ooh, kind of rough. That's called psychological and emotional warfare, my friend. And as somebody that is in counter-terrorism, I'm telling you, they're in the wrong.
They're basically online terrorists.
As I mentioned before, this interview is 2 hours long, with a solid hour being a non-stop rant delivered by Fabia. I'm only scratching the surface of the interview with a few points that I think will become crucial to understanding the events of April and May of 2021. Those events being the cancellation of Diego's fight with Cowboy Cerrone, Diego's release from the UFC, and ultimately the separation of Sanchez and Fabia. So let's begin. It started rather strangely in late April, when a now-deleted video was posted to Diego Sanchez's Instagram. In the video, which was actually recorded after Diego's fight with Jake Matthews in 2020, Josh Fabia complains about them being left at the airport by the UFC.
And as all the people from the UFC went ahead of us, and not one representative cared to look back and see where we were at, they all went to baggage claim, and they all went on a bus and somehow loaded up and left, us sitting here in the airport so that Diego Nightmare Sanchez is stuck getting food out of a fucking vending machine. This is our reality. So when I'm telling you the UFC is not so respectful or doing Diego right, this is what I'm talking about. Look at this fucking place. There ain't nothing else going on but us. And Diego got left. Did Diego not put on a show? You remember that.
While a bit odd at first glance, this situation becomes much more strange on April 28th. With no warning or reason given at the time, it was announced that Diego Sanchez was out of his upcoming fight with Donald Cerrone. This announcement seemingly triggered the release of a series of videos recorded behind the scenes by Fabia. The first of which was a 2-part recording taken during Diego's meeting with the UFC broadcast team before his fight with Jake Matthews on Fight Island. If you think the timeline of events is complicated now, just wait. Diego's chat with the broadcast team actually went really well. It's a pretty typical Q&A where the broadcast team was trying to get some information about Diego's life and things of that nature. For his part, Diego seemed ready to finish up the last leg of his career and start a new chapter in his life. The whole interview went perfectly fine, right up until it was almost over, and Josh Fabia decided to interrupt and chastise the broadcast team for biased commentary.
Real quick, guys, just because you don't know who the hell I am, and you guys heard a lot of shit talk and all the good stuff. Let's just cut the bullshit on commentating. No low blows on this guy. No trying to turn the narrative that he's fucking up his legacy and all that weird stuff. Let's just keep it fair. You want some video? Contact me and I'll send it to you. You want to know what's going on? You want to actually talk to the people doing it? You might actually have to fucking talk to me. And coming at him like he's gonna know all this shit, he ain't. He hasn't been there the whole time. So if anybody needs to actually get those answers, you will have to speak to me. And to do that, probably allowing the media to turn the narrative on the guy that's trying to help people here. And when you respect these two legends, it seems a little disrespectful that you don't recognize that they respect me. And if you're going to be the one telling the narrative, that's on you when I'm getting shit on by the public, by millions of people.
Again, I want you to focus on Diego. Watch the way his demeanor completely changes as Fabia takes control of the conversation. The details of what Fabia is complaining about here aren't particularly important. What I find interesting is how abrasive and aggressive he is. When he starts lecturing the broadcast team, the temperature of the room flips almost instantly from being congenial and polite to outright hostile.
You guys are like the tough guys and all this stuff.
If nobody's
Man, I
gonna,
don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
You don't know? You don't? You know what I'm referring to?
No, I don't know what you're referring to.
Okay.
And I haven't called one of Diego's fights where you've been in his corner.
No,
So-
I'm talking in general because of
Well,
what
it's
has
not my
happened.
job to talk about what the public is talking about outside. It's my job to talk about this athlete
Absolutely, sir.
and his performance.
That's
in the
not
cage.
what I'm
That's it.
referring to. That's not what I'm referring to, and I'm not trying to offend you.
I think Megan O'Leary is the real star of the video, as she repeatedly attacks Fabia's self-centered agenda and calls him out for disrespecting Diego and the broadcast team.
Why are you talking?
This is not about you. This is Diego's fighter meeting.
There's no reason.
But it has
for
to
this
do
go.
with him. That's my point.
Because you're disrespecting us, and we have other athletes that are waiting right now to be in this room to have the opportunity that Diego just had, and you're lecturing us on something that
Nobody's
we
lecturing.
haven't
I'm
even
trying
done.
to ask for a fair plight. If the media is going to...
Totally. Listen, that's totally understandable, but delivering the message could be in a much more respectful way. We're not filming it to try to
She's not
make
saying
clout
the
or
when,
something.
she's talking about the how.
Yeah,
Yes.
we don't need to film anything.
You're filming it, not
That's
us.
fine. That's fine.
The most interesting part of this interaction, in my opinion, actually takes place after the fighter meeting. UFC commentator John Anik, being the professional that he is, attempts to reassure Fabia that he will try to be as fair as possible with Diego's commentary.
I can't say.
Of course. But like, rest assured, I see what's out there, and on broadcast, I will never do anything but
I'm just saying the last time.
And this is the one moment I'm in front of you, sir. And all I'm saying is, let's stop the low man. Like, seriously.
And I understand.
I'm like over it. It's slander. It's character assassination.
I agree.
It's a whole lot of things.
I agree.
And
that's all.
my boss is going to kill me if I'm not in there for stars, but.
Instead of thanking Anik for his effort, Fabia launches into another narcissistic rant and does everything he can to keep the conversation from ending.
Well, right. And so when the UFC is doing commentating, and they are putting this angle out, and I got Max here talking shit, I got DC talking shit, and neither one of these assholes will stand next to me and move with me. I'm over it. I'm just talking to people, and all of a sudden I'm an asshole.
Well, no, and
nobody's showing up.
I will do my best to do right by not just Diego's name.
You're looking good. Thank you, John. I came to shake your hand. I have respect for you, and I appreciate you, man.
There's no shit on us. There's no venue for me to shit on that. And for me to take 5 minutes of your time when we've been waiting around all day, come on, man, that was rude. That was rude as fuck. And you know it, brother.
Have a good day, guys.
Yeah.
Good to see you, sir.
But that's the power of the camera.
Someone called, so I had to restart.
Oh, it's okay.
In my first video about Diego Sanchez, I made the joke that despite running a school of self-awareness, Joshua Fabia doesn't have any. That comment is still true. Fabia really doesn't understand how to talk to people. If he can't brainwash you with verbal diarrhea and a soothing guru voice, he tries to overwhelm you with aggression, unnecessary swearing, and non-stop babbling that doesn't let you get a word in. Moreover, he isn't capable of understanding when these tactics don't work and why. Even when he is told that he's complaining to the wrong people, he'll just barrel through with another gripe about Joe Rogan or Daniel Cormier as if he didn't even hear what was said. The possibility that he could be wrong or that he might be taking the wrong approach will never enter into his mind. He doesn't even understand that leaking recordings like this don't make the UFC look bad as much as they make him look like an entitled, aggressive narcissist who is taking every opportunity to make Diego's career about himself. On April 29th, Diego's Instagram posted that he was free at last in a story that tagged Bellator, One Championship, Bare Knuckle FC, and Brave Combat Federation. The following day, it was officially announced that Diego had been released by the UFC, who also paid him his show and win money for the Donald Cerrone fight. This is where things get a bit hectic. The same day this news was made public, Diego's Instagram posted 2 more videos. One was a phone call that Josh Fabia had with Sean Shelby and UFC lawyer Hunter Campbell. Curiously, this phone call really took place on April 9th, and Fabia had been sitting on it for 3 weeks. Early on, Campbell explains the reason for the call was that Fabia made a request to the UFC's medical department for Diego's entire medical history during his time competing for the company.
Hey, pal.
Okay.
So I just got a text from someone in my medical department basically saying that you called them for a, quote, formal request for all of Diego's pre-fight medical records paper copy, all necessary post-fight records, every physician that he has ever been evaluated by. By the way, we have no control over any of that. That's all commission done, so you'd have to make those requests formally with the commission. But more importantly, what the direct quote that I received was, you stated that the, quote, long-term effects of Diego being an MMA fighter were your basis for requesting it.
Yeah.
So I went through this with Mark Hunt, and here's the reality. If you're concerned or he's concerned that he's having negative effects, then we're not going to fight him. And I'm going to pull the fight right now. And we're going to call it a day, and we'll release him, and he can go do something else with his life. Because I'm not putting anybody in that cage that doesn't feel 100% or thinks they're suffering from any medical issues.
Perhaps sensing danger, Fabia says that he was simply requesting Diego's medical history so that he could know how to treat Diego in the future. But Campbell explains that the commission handles that information, not the UFC. A bit later, Hunter Campbell makes the issues explicitly clear by saying that he will send them an email and that Diego needs to say in writing that he is not suffering any negative effects from fighting.
Here's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I'm going to send an email to you guys. I'm going to express my concerns.
Okay.
I need a confirmation in writing that he's physically able to compete. He's not suffering any ill effects of being an MMA fighter. He doesn't feel like he has any brain issues or cognitive issues. I got to go through the whole battery that I go through with everybody that sort of makes a claim that you, at least they're telling me that you made in this situation. And if he's not comfortable doing that, then we pull the fight and we move on. It's very simple.
Yeah, we're already...
Fabia tries to pivot away from this by saying that he's already scheduled a date for new medicals and reiterates that Diego is fine. I think the most crucial moment of the phone call is this comment from Hunter.
He's fine, man. Everything's good. So...
I mean, you understand my position, right? I can't ever be in a situation where 10 years from now I got a guy that's drooling on himself in a hospital, and I got another guy saying, yeah, we told the UFC before his last fight that he was having all these issues, and they put him in there anyway.
Gotcha. I understand that totally. Hey, let me, I'll leave it at that. That's cool.
When I said earlier that Fabia doesn't know how to talk to people, that is only half the issue. I simply don't think he is particularly smart. He showed his hand to the UFC. For months, Fabia and Diego had been bringing up the brutal nature of MMA and the damage that fighters suffer, specifically brain damage. They even visited Spencer Fisher in the lead up to the Cowboy fight. That's perfectly fine in my opinion, but when Fabia went to the UFC for Diego's entire medical history, it threw up red flags with the company that ultimately resulted in Diego being cut, as he and Fabia explained during an interview with Kevin Aioli of Yahoo Sports. In this interview, we learned that Sanchez had technically been fired on the 27th after Hunter Campbell emailed Diego's lawyer. Campbell wrote that the UFC would pay Diego his show and win money and would be happy to pay him to visit the Cleveland Clinic's Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health in Las Vegas, where he would have access to the very best neurological experts in the country, but added that they wouldn't risk a fighter's health and safety by promoting a bout where a fighter wasn't able to affirm that they were not suffering any long or short-term medical issues. When Diego's lawyer replied that Sanchez could not affirm any such representations, the UFC released him. Aside from discussing Diego's release from the UFC, this interview also went into detail about some of the other controversies we have heard about so far. On the topic of Fabia chasing MMA fighters around with knives, Fabia stated that there are ancient remembrances, an echo of time of how much humans have killed other humans with swords, knives, and metal that our organs are sensitive to, adding that a blindfolded Sanchez was able to sense a knife coming towards him without seeing it. Fabia also explained his frustration with referee Mark Smith in the locker room before Diego's fight with Michael Chiesa, and events that prompted him to bring up a deadly finishing move. Quote, "When the ref comes in to tell me the rules, he's like, yeah, you've been here before, blah blah blah. And then as he's about to leave, as fast as he can say it, he turns and says, and if you don't defend yourself within 3 seconds, I'll have to call it. And he turns and starts beelining to the door. So I go, no. That's the rig in and of itself right there. Holy shit, this dude told you to your face that in 3 seconds he's gonna call it. I'm like, what the expletive? And I stop him before he gets to the door. I said, okay, all good, but you should probably know that we have been doing something in sports that you would call a potentially dangerous move. You know, this is combat sports, I said. You probably don't know this technique, as it has not been done in MMA, but if it goes to a certain point, you need to call it in less than 3 seconds. Otherwise, that's on you, ref. Remember, this was live on pay-per-views. You want to play games? Okay." End quote. This obviously caused some concern on behalf of the Athletic Commission, which prompted officials Bob Bennett and Jeff Mullen to question Diego in the locker room. Part of this conversation was recorded, but at the request of Mark Smith, the camera was turned off.
Yo, Rudy.
Yeah.
We need. Hey, Diego. I'm Bob Bennett. I'm the executive director of WageN. Do me a favor. I just want to speak to him for a quick second privately with his manager. If you
speak to him?
Yeah, we don't. If you want to just step out for a second. Thanks. And listen, I'm looking to get in. We wish you continued success and watch you fight for years. We have a lot of respect for you. Your manager was professional enough to explain some of the techniques, but we want to clarify and confirm a couple of things. We don't want to take away from your strengths. You know, we expect you to go out there. You know, we're in the hurt business. There's no doubt about it. You know, I don't have to tell you you've been in forever, but I want
I just wanted to touch base real quick because he brought up. Can you turn it on?
After which the commission members allegedly tried to ascertain whether Diego was intentionally planning to injure Chiesa. According to Diego, this interruption affected his performance because he was afraid they were going to cancel the fight or possibly take his license. But I digest. In yet another Instagram video released that day, Diego confirmed many of the statements made in the Yahoo article, adding a few more bits of information about his release from the UFC.
In the final 12 days leading to the fight, I got a text message from Sean Shelby, and it was a message saying, Diego, you need to check your email because Hunter sent you an email and it's extremely important that you read this email and respond to this email by tomorrow or the fight is going to be canceled. And so right away I was like, oh shit, you know, the fight's going to get canceled. They're going to pull the fight. What do I do? I talked to my people and I replied the best way I could reply to Hunter's email, and that's with my lawyer's advice. And with my lawyer's advice, you know, I replied the best I could. UFC wanted me to state that I am not experiencing any neurological issues and that I have no long-term health side effects from fighting a career of 17 years in the UFC. And so basically my advisors told me, hey, like basically what they're trying to do is right before you finish your last fight, they're trying to just make sure they have documentation of you saying that you never sustained anything. So basically you're being forced, being bullied into waiving your medical rights, medical possible liabilities. And so with that being said, the email was sent to Hunter, and the response was very fast. And the response was from Hunter and Sean and Dana, but only Hunter Campbell's signature was on the letter. Only his name was on the letter. And the letter said that they have chosen to pay me 100% for the fight, the show money, the win money, and the sponsorship money. And due to me traveling and completing the training camp that I did for this camp, and with that, the fight is to be canceled. And why? The only thing that was on the email was, due to your last loss at Abu Dhabi versus Jake Matthews, no explanation other than that. And so this seems like a lot of bullshit to me, because if you ask me, if the problem was my performance in my Jake Matthews fight, why entertain me with the Cowboy fight? Why have a meeting with me, Sean? Why give me my fight papers? Why sign the fight? Why sign the bout? Why sell the fight to ESPN? Many questions that don't make sense to me. Another question that doesn't.
I think Diego makes some reasonable points here, but he would eventually descend into more conspiracy theories about going up against a billion-dollar industry.
And so, if this was the case, I wouldn't be sticking by his side, having his back. And the truth of the whole matter is, me and him having each other's back against a billion-dollar monopoly worldwide organization. Yeah, when you bring awareness and you bring light to some of the issues within the organization of a billion-dollar corporation, yes, red flags are gonna rise. And there's been a lot of red flags, and there's a lot of things that are not right about the industry.
Sadly, these conspiracy theories would only become more unhinged in the coming days. On May 4th, Diego appeared on MMA Today, and in a unique change, he was alone. The interview was 40 minutes long, and Diego repeats a lot of things we've heard already, so I only want to focus on a few moments that I think stand head and shoulders above the rest of the interview. The first comes about 28 minutes in. After Diego has just discussed Fabia confronting the UFC commentary team, he claims that the UFC is trying to silence them, and that he fears for his life.
And to be honest with you, I'm going to tell you guys both frankly right now, I'm fearful, man. I'm fearful for my motherfucking life. I'm fearful that this company, this billion-dollar monopoly company worldwide is going to come after me. Something might happen to me in 2 years, maybe in a couple years. Maybe something happened. Maybe my truck fall. Maybe I wrecked my truck. Maybe something happened. Maybe Diego overdosed on some suicide shit. I don't know, but I would not put anything past the level of evil that is within this corporation.
As troubling as this statement is to hear, I think it gets worse. The reason why goes hand in hand with the clip I want to show you next.
I'm still here. I'm still able to speak to you guys. Thank God for that. And that's also due to Joshua Fabia helping me. He mentored me and coached me in speech. He mentored me and coached me in how to be a better father, how to so many other things.
In my first video about Diego Sanchez, I said that I believed Fabia had been coaching Sanchez to repeat the narrative that Diego was the one making all of the decisions and that Joshua Fabia wasn't in control. I believe Joshua Fabia was in Diego's ear long before the Chiesa fight, planting seeds of doubt and convincing Diego that he needed to preemptively let people know that he wasn't being scammed or conned, that it was all his decision. And I'm sure Diego believes that. He's being manipulated. Somebody came into Diego's life, someone that Diego admits he vented all of his emotions and problems to. Then, that person isolated Diego from his support group, and started to prey on Diego's greatest fear, which is CTE. And then that person positioned himself as the only one who could help Diego. Here was proof to back up my speculation. Think of every time so far that Diego or Fabia has mentioned manipulation, bots, fake accounts, and so on. Now think of how many times that Diego has virtually echoed Fabia's talking points word for word. When I hear Diego say that he thinks his life is in danger from the UFC, I don't think that is an organic thought that he came up with. It sounds like something that would come out of the mouth of a self-styled counterterrorism agent. All this paranoia, all these conspiracy theories, they seem like an attempt to manipulate and isolate Diego, to gaslight him into believing that nothing he read or encountered was real, that he couldn't trust anything anyone said to him. That way he would dismiss all of the comments of concern as coming from fake accounts instead of real people that were genuinely worried about his well-being. It may have even extended beyond the internet, as Diego later stated that he had to disown some family members to stay loyal to Fabia. These are textbook behaviors employed by abusers and manipulators to prevent you from leaving them. Over the following days of early May, we continue to get a steady drip of developments in the Diego Sanchez story. The most unusual being a leaked training video where Fabia put Diego through bizarre exercises, like moving around a boxing ring with a blindfold on.
Right after you get touched, you got counted. There you go. Good.
More disturbing was the footage of Fabia striking Diego repeatedly in the head while he was hanging upside down. Now, just looking at the training methods we've seen Fabia employ, this didn't seem too out of the ordinary. Shit, we've seen Fabia hit Diego with a stick while he was upside down before. I think there is an important difference with this clip though. Since Fabia has been doing these self-aggrandizing interviews, he has always emphasized the damage fighters sustain, specifically brain damage and head trauma, and how he was a coaching genius for completely changing Diego's style so that he could avoid taking that damage.
Yeah, we could definitely talk about bullying, but everybody thinks I'm crying,
Yeah,
so we won't go there with it, because clearly nobody wants to talk about the sensitive subjects of this sport, right? Like the injuries, like the careers and the life after fighting, right? Let's not talk about that. Let's just talk about, we want to see Diego look like Diego after a fight. And that guy, if you pull up any of those pictures, that guy looks pretty bad, whether he wins or loses.
How is this teaching Diego to avoid taking damage? It's just hitting him in the head. What is the super secret technique he's learning here? I have the answer to that. Fabia mentioned it in the Mike Swick interview.
So I'm seeing guys get knocked out like nothing, yet I never see any of them training getting hit.
Mm-hmm.
So Diego, I hit Diego 20 minutes a day. 20 minutes a day I hit him. So his body understands impact.
Just think about that for a minute. Let it really soak in. I'll wait. Okay, so we have a fighter who has already sustained a tremendous amount of damage, who absorbed nearly 900 significant strikes to the head in his UFC career, and we're spending 20 minutes a day hitting him so he gets used to being hit. If Diego Sanchez isn't used to being hit, I don't know who the fuck could be. It just makes me angry and sad to hear this. And I'm not the only one. When this video was discovered, pretty much everyone in the MMA community was appalled by it. Even John Jones said he was disgusted. Imagine being ethically in the wrong relative to John Jones. We're not quite done with the disturbing revelations though. Let's talk about Diego Sanchez's OnlyFans account. From its inception, Diego's OnlyFans account was a source of controversy. This was at least in part due to the widespread speculation that there was a sexual component to Diego and Fabia's relationship, which led to many memes and jokes about them being gay lovers. Something that Fabia probably used to alienate Diego Sanchez from outside influences that were concerned about him. Diego always maintained that the OnlyFans account was not sexual.
You know, it's not a sexual thing. It's a non-sexual. It's real content. It's all my behind the scenes content. And these are real fans, real people. You know, they are verified themselves.
Was that description accurate though? I'm not going to make an OnlyFans account and pay $10 to see the posts. But at one point, it was free to subscribe, and people found, interesting content. Some of these choice posts that were hidden behind paywalls had titles like, "You know you like that tight butt, winky face. 2 guys, 1 shirtless, 1 with tight little shorts. Can you imagine which one is which? Give me a stick and I'll show you what you can do with it." And this may not be sex, but it is sexy and enticing, winky face. It's more than likely that these are just normal videos or photos of Diego training that Fabia titled a bit, let's say creatively, to entice a certain demographic that will be willing to pay for videos of sweaty, shirtless dudes rolling around on the ground. That being said, it was just another in the long list of examples you could point to when making the case that Fabia was dragging Diego's legacy through the mud. The same could be said of Fabia making accusations against Dana White and Sean Shelby of sleeping with female fighters.
Why is nobody talking about that the reckoning happened and somehow Dana White gets to fuck fighters? How many female fighters has he had sex with? How many female fighters has Sean Shelby had sex with?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the truth, man.
Now, this clip comes from an 1.5 hour long interview that Diego and Fabia did with a man named John Gibson. Unfortunately, my dumbass forgot to archive it, and John Gibson has made the video private, possibly because of that accusation. From what I recall, though, there wasn't much of note other than this clip and a few other short ones. Dana ended up firing back at Fabia through Instagram DMs, where Josh accused Dana of sending assassins after him. Dana confirmed that he had sent D after them. D's nuts. As funny as that is, there was a serious issue here. Fabia was digging a hole, not only for himself, but for Diego. This was at a time when Diego was literally weeping over the fact that Dana White wouldn't have a conversation with him. Now Fabia was trying to drive a wedge further between them. Thankfully, a change was in the air. On May 10th, Diego Sanchez spoke to MMAfighting.com and said that he was communicating with the UFC again. The bigger story, though, was that Diego had taken the UFC up on their offer to enroll in a brain health study at the Cleveland Institute. In spite of this, Diego was still hesitant to fully trust the UFC. Quote, "To be honest, I feel vulnerable right now. I'm dealing with a billion-dollar corporation, so if you guys want to pretend like they're the most honest company and they're doing the most honest and moral work, you can pretend and bullshit yourself. But I ain't going to believe that. When medicals have been a part of this whole scandal, and medicals potentially being falsified, we don't know what's going on. We've been a part of an investigation that's been going on for a couple of years. Right now, we're at this step. The UFC is going to help me get some MRIs and some studies done, and we're going to move forward from there." End quote. After this announcement, the updates on the Diego Sanchez situation all but stopped for a period of 10 days. Then, on the 20th of May, we were hit with a bombshell. Diego Sanchez had ended his professional relationship with Joshua Fabia. In a statement to MMA Fighting, Sanchez declined to comment further at the time. However, Diego's attorney added that any power of attorney that Fabia had has been rescinded/terminated. Since their relationship gained widespread attention, people have speculated about how deeply Joshua had worked himself into Diego's life. To get confirmation that he had power of attorney was a truly frightening display of the power Fabia held over Sanchez. But things were about to get worse. On May 23rd, 3 days after Diego announced his split from Fabia, Joshua appeared on the radio show Behind the Scenes with Summer Helene. During this interview, Fabia would accuse Sanchez of taking advantage of him and expose deeply personal aspects of Diego's life. To be honest, this interview was more difficult to listen to than most of Fabia's interviews because the hosts are pretty combative with him. He deserves it, but it does make most of the interview a waste of time. There are some interesting comments here and there, such as Fabia's explanation of the bizarre training footage where he punched an upside-down Diego.
The point is that in body hardening, you could not favor one part of the body, Summer, as every part of your body is vulnerable. So to balance that, you wouldn't be so ashamed to have your face touched. And so what's really going on is that, because I am not hitting him hard enough to damage anything, not even surface tissue. And the reality is he's been trained to handle much, much, much harder impacts than that. And what is happening in that is not training. Are you guys, I mean, like, do you see how ridiculous that narrative setup is? No, the truth is that video was leaked by who? It's the highest production fucking video I've ever had done. You think it's the UFC? Yeah, it's the fucking UFC that came and filmed us and didn't say a fucking word about, oh, that looks dangerous. No, they're cheering us on and they love it. And it's all fucking set up.
After another 10 plus minutes of arguing in circles, we get the most interesting part of the interview. Fabia begins explaining that Diego falsely represented himself as a regular person, and this is where things take a very dark turn.
I'm trying to express how I feel about what has happened in my time of 2 years of being slandered in the UFC, working for a guy that falsely represented himself as a regular person. As I get to more information as I'm with the lawyer, and the lawyer talks to Diego and asks Diego about his education, and he starts talking about he was in special education. Holy shit, huge red flags, man. And Diego has been an addict. He hadn't told anybody for the past 5 months. I was his sponsor, living with him, that I had to live there because he was broke and lost all his money and strung out on kratom and alcohol and 30 other substances. that he has sexual abuse issues. No, he didn't say any of that, man. And I've been holding up all this. I've been doing everything, and everybody's coming at me.
Then what about the belief?
Understand
so everyone,
why Diego has clearly been taking advantage of me for 2 years, as I have been fighting for him and putting myself on the line for him with zero benefit.
There was a time when I thought it was at least possible that maybe Fabia did have Diego's best interest in mind, that he was advocating for Diego. Maybe he was crazy enough to believe that he was helping Diego, that he could heal Diego and teach him how to fight in a way that resulted in him taking less damage. That goes out the window here. Frankly, I've heard few things more despicable than what Fabia said about Diego in this interview. If he's lying, he's spreading disgusting falsehoods about Diego. But if he's telling the truth, it's so much worse. By his own admission, he was Diego's sponsor, which means this incredibly personal information was given to Fabia in good faith as part of a healing process. And what does Fabia do? He not only exposes these secrets told to him in confidence, but then he tries to spin them around on Diego as red flags or attempts to hide his true character. It's a textbook example of Darvo, a tactic used by abusers and manipulators to make themselves seem like the real victims. Darvo stands for Deny, Attack, and Reverse Victim and Offender. It is a classic technique used by narcissists, and you can see all of the elements present in the way that Fabia attempted to defend himself by making Diego seem like a liar who was actually manipulating and taking advantage of Fabia. If Fabia was willing to use Darvo tactics this brazenly in a public interview, I can only imagine what he was saying to Diego in private. This becomes all the more chilling when you take into account the other factors like Fabia having Diego's power of attorney, or as we would later learn, control of Diego's social media accounts. On June 1st, Diego would finally publicly address his public split from Fabia in an Instagram post. Quote, "To all my family, friends, fans, and the MMA community, thank you all for your continued love and support through this very challenging time in my life. I appreciate all of the defense that arose from me on behalf of my career, myself, and all of those who were involved. Thank you for those who have been sensitive to this issue. I apologize to all of those that were affected negatively. I will refrain from provoking this situation any longer. I refuse to fire back on accusations that in the intent were made to provoke me and those close to me. Once again, my faith has taught me how to love thy neighbor and love thy enemy. I wish for peace to surface moving forward." Luke 6:27-36. I will lift Josh and Rebecca up in prayer. Prayer that God helps them find their peaceful awareness. In Christ, Diego Sanchez. End quote. That same day, Diego tweeted to his fans that he was back and admitted that he had nothing to do with the Diego Sanchez OnlyFans account. It had been run by Fabia and his assistant, Rebecca, who had been direct messaging fans while pretending to be Diego. I think most people expected this to be the case, but it does go one step further. When Sanchez was asked in the replies if Fabia was running his Instagram too, Diego said that his management had control of his social media accounts from January 17th through May 13th. Again, while this may not be surprising, it casts everything that was posted by Diego during the first 5 months of 2021 in a different light. Just as an example, think of how different the Free at Last Instagram post reads when you know that it's Fabia posting it instead of Diego. Not to mention all of the School of Self-Awareness promotion that was being done across his various accounts. Thankfully, Diego has removed those affiliations since he regained control of his accounts, and it appears that he is taking steps in the right direction after splitting from Fabia. But we're not quite out of the woods yet. The truth is, people like Joshua Fabia have a natural ability to work their way back into your life. The road ahead for Diego is going to be a difficult one. I have no doubt that Fabia has been plotting something, and Diego will have to avoid getting drawn back into that web. But at least for the time being, it seems we've avoided the worst possible outcomes. It's rare that I get to make a video where there is something resembling an ending. It's even rarer that said ending can even be considered remotely happy or positive. In fact, this may be the first time something like this has happened. I don't really know what the future holds for Diego, but he has an opportunity here. It was sad to see Fabia's antics bring such a disgraceful end to Diego's legendary UFC career. But it did have a silver lining. It was a clean break from the sport. In the last few months, Diego has spoke at length about the addiction to fighting.
Take the time to do what you got to do, not just dream, not just this dream of winning and victory. Because what it is when you get in there and you feel that, Diego, and Bruce Buffer and the Nightmare, and they're holding your hand up, and you're releasing all these chemicals in your brain, man, and it's addicting. You know, you become an addict. You become an addict for that feeling of, oh man, you know, like, you know, I'm famous and I'm victorious and don't get me wrong, it is a great feeling, but it's not the only feeling that you need to chase in life. And there is a lot of other ways to find these great chemicals that are in our body that we can release, you know, and you know, be healthy.
I'm sure that temptation to fight, to hear thousands of people chanting his name, is still there for Diego. There is a reason why so many fighters keep fighting long after the point when they should have stopped. As much as Diego may want to step back into the cage or the ring, I hope that he doesn't. This is his chance to start a new chapter of his life and finally put the nightmare to bed. As always, I want to thank you for watching the video as well as liking, commenting, and subscribing. And a special thank you to my supporters on Patreon who help make these videos possible. Thank you, Dan Thomas, Doug Reilly, Fightback CBD, Mike Roballs, Ryan Cedor, Zelda Z, Alex, Devad Soro, I Said No Cops, Kevin Howard, Lord Swoldemort, Max, Neem, Paulo Gomez, Raghav Verma, Ratman, Snepst, Tambi Helmick, and the Son of Man.